self-worth and self-value play integral roles in how you see and treat yourself in your everyday life. How do you utilize valuing yourself through your words and actions? Aligning ourselves to our self-worth allows us to move into more actionable steps that grow and nurture that worth. Tune in to True Love Knots as Maria Romano is with David Tutera. David will discuss his book's background and how his life experiences have taught him to recognize his value.
All right. So, hello, David Tutera. This is exciting. I am so excited for my community here. And it's not just go beyond Las Vegas to have you today on the podcast. So for those of you that might not know who he is, and if you don't, well, let me tell you. First of all, he's been 3 decades, it's hard to believe, right, in the industry. And also you authored 7 books, but it didn't include this one. So I don't know, is it your 8th?
That's my 8th book, yes.
Right. This is a little different than your previous 7, which we'll get to discuss. You are the event planner to event planners. You are a mentor. You are a papa. You are a husband. You're a son, right? And your friends, and you've done multiple TV shows, which I love. My Fair Weddings. My daughter turned me on to that years ago.
Aww.
Before I started officiating, that goes to show you. And also you have a bridal wear line, and maybe one day I'll be a bride again. I'm a widow, but maybe one day I'll get to wear. So I'm excited. So hugs and kisses. I want to welcome David Tutera. Welcome, David. How are you doing? And happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, thank you, Maria. I can't think of a better day to be on with you on Valentine's Day with all the love surrounding you. And I love the love in the background of you, which is so wonderful. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. And yes, today is weddings in Las Vegas. I don't know where are you at right now?
I'm in Malibu.
Malibu. So weather was not great for photography. It just came through like a whirlwind. And I'm glad I wasn't on a helicopter, because I do them in the helicopters too. But today, as we know, it is Love Day. And I want to just take a moment. First of all, you were raised in New York, Portchester. I'm Bronx born, so I know. Oh. Italian. Yes, Italian. Even though my married name is Romano, I'm also La Vecchia, so I know all about the Italian family. But let's take a moment, because we know who David Tutera is in the event industry. But let's take a moment and go back. I was astounded. You had me, I'm sorry, I was laughing about what your father and your grandparents did. Share with them what their family business was.
Well, so my family owns a funeral home. It's 3rd generation. My grandfather started it. My father took it over. My brother, who's my younger brother, is working with my father. So I grew up in the world of how I like to say it, and I wrote it in my book. I grew up with death around me at all times. Which is for a later story, but it sort of, grounded me in a very different way. However, funny fact, because I do like to share, some comical moments in my book as well as some serious, there's a lot of serious in it. But my dad would drive me to middle school in the hearse. Yes. And sometimes there'd be a third person in the hearse, which would be a dead body in the back on his way to work. So think about that as a 12-year-old, 11-year-old kid going to school and being dropped off in a hearse. And I begged him to say, no, don't do that. I can't anymore.
I was laughing when I was reading that. I was absolutely laughing because what I loved that you loved going to your grandparents. As we Italians, we have big families, but going to our grandparents, didn't that feel like a security blanket to you?
Oh my God, it was like my blanket wrapped up all around me at all times. Yes, 100% yes.
And then also, Cher, you also got involved. Which would you, your father's father or your mother's father? Who was the florist? So tell me.
So my mom's side of the family,
right,
which is my grandfather, Papa. He came over from Italy, from Sicily. Okay. I'm sorry, Calabria. And he came over from Calabria at 7 years old, no education. At the age of 13, started sweeping the floors. Fast forward, at 47 years old, he purchased the flower shop. And at that time, years later, I wound up working for him in the back, never making flowers, but simply answering the phone calls for the people that were wanting to have flower arrangements created. And I think because it was all around me, I was there, I sort of took it all in and realized, oh, I love this idea of being creative. It was pretty cool.
And that gave you the spark of the creativity.
It did. And he was the one that lent me the money to start my business when I was only 19 years old.
Was that the singing telegram or the
Yes.
other? I
Yes.
read the book, David.
Yes, you did. And I did a lot of crazy things as a singing telegram delivery person.
And so one thing is I noticed early on in the book, okay, and I have it written, I have my notes here. You start off with going back to Portchester High School, okay, which one of the things I was very touched on is you had an incident, and you share this in your book. And what I liked, let me just preface this, I like that you were never disparaging to anybody that you wrote about. So you kept confidentiality, and I like that. And I thought about that last night as I went back to reread it, some of it again. You wrote a book that your daughters could read, and you would
Yes.
not be embarrassed. And I
Thank
think
you.
you
Thank you.
no, that's what I noticed in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because that's what we need to always set an example of how we lead through the world and love. And that's what you basically, even though you went through a situation in high school where there was a predator technically that was a
Yes.
teacher, and it's amazing. Share with us a little bit. I can only imagine how you felt. And what I loved is you put information in the back of the book. Share, because you're not the only person out there, but you wrote about it, which is important.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I decided to write this book during COVID, which was probably the worst time to do it because you were so raw and so emotional, I think it actually made me bring the things out that I had forgotten, and it came to the pages. And first of all, as a parent, it is incredibly important to protect our children. We all know that, right? But in the situation that I was in school, when this predator was a teacher, and this teacher was, this wasn't a first for him. He had done it several times before. Gratefully and thankfully, I was smart enough to not fall into his trap. Unfortunately, I was running from it at all times. I was bullied through school. I was made fun of nonstop. I was made fun of everything that I did wrong. I was a little kid. I was, scrawny, and I was probably, not the most masculine child that the other boys thought I should have been. And I had a hard time. So when this person who was a teacher in the school took a latching on to me, I thought, oh my God, I had a savior. But the savior wound up being, the worst demon in my life that followed me through such a period of time. And I love that you picked up on the fact that I didn't say anything poorly about people. It was more about sharing how to be aware, what to do if you have this situation, where to go, who to speak to. My parents didn't have the tools to say, this is what you should do or what you shouldn't do. They didn't know. They didn't have their eyes open. I'm not blaming them. I'm certainly saying we as parents, all of us, or people as friends, have to stand by someone and protect them when they need the protection.
Especially when you're young,
Yes.
Especially today. And I think post-COVID, we've seen a lot more of mental health, right?
Yes.
Where we need a lot more guidance in the world. A lot of us need to listen. I love therapy. So definitely. So I think that that's important to talk about these things. And even though I'm in the wedding industry, you're in the event industry, it's all things love. There's still another side, okay? Because we want to bring love into this world we want everything to be happy. But unfortunately, there are some people out there that not always do things in the right pattern and that also need help. There's nothing wrong that Mr. English wanted to be with male people, but not young. That's the key thing. And I think today I have a daughter, although she's in her close 37, she'll kill me that I said that on the phone. The point is what I'm trying to say is that I think I love that you brought that up. And in the beginning of the book, you're going back into Portchester High School, and you are addressing, was it the graduating class?
It was the commencement speech to the graduating
class. And you
class.
had written something that you said that you can do anything. Do you remember that? If you believe in yourself, and even though others don't believe in you, they will believe in you.
Yes.
What a powerful moment.
Thank you.
What?
I have a quote that I share a lot. I didn't read it. I didn't put it into the book. I say, surround yourself with people that believe you are great because you are.
Oh, I love that.
It's that simple. If you walk around assuming that you're just not the value of what you're worth, you're not going to find yourself out of that darkness. And everybody has a moment in their life, or multiple. For me, it was multiple moments where I felt like I can't do this. I can't go forward. And you have two options. You have two options, right? We know what number one is and number two is, and we want to make sure that we make the right options for ourselves. And as a parent now, I'm so aware of my 4-year-old and my 9-year-old. And one of the things I talk about in the book is I always tell them at night when I put them to sleep, either one of them, I always remind them that we're here for you as your two daddies. We love you, support you, guide you, protect you, listen to you, and make sure that you are safe. Safe. That is the key.
Mic drop, mic drop. Wait, you said something very important, which is it Cielo? Did I pronounce her name right?
Cielo means heaven in Italian.
Shame on me.
It's okay.
Cielo and Gracie, right?
Yes.
So a couple of things. Your oldest daughter, Cielo, experienced a form of bullying. You talk about that in the book because she has two papas. Yes. So, I think that you're right there. You were protecting her, and we just need to be more educated and aware and at home about what we say to our children. Some households, you have a mom and dad. Some households, you have two moms, two pops. Sometimes you just have one parent or grandparents. So we're a melting pot. And I think that's the key thing today is being inclusive and not exclusive. And that's why I think a lot of the industry has changed. We have seen, I know in the the wedding industry, on how we portray over the last several years, weddings. The only way I got started quickly, and this is not about me, is 14 years ago, when I started pounding the pavement to do this, nobody wanted to have me as a minister. So I had to go in and say, okay, I'll do commitment ceremonies because nobody else did. So, it's just, you have to just be able to recognize love as love. But I love the fact, tell me, how's your daughter doing now with that? And you don't want Gracie to go through it.
Cielo is doing brilliant with it because she has been given the tools to protect herself, the tools to share with other people, exactly what you just said, that there's so many dynamics of different families. Once she got through that period, and then she was old enough and able and capable to just stand up for herself or walk away. One of the things, this is a very funny story, I said to Cielo when she was going through this, I said, when you're in this moment where someone, a classmate or whomever, is giving you a hard time, turn around, smile to them, and walk away. So what she did, which is a cute story, I have to share the end of this, is that she would walk up and she would smile at them, and then she goes, now I'm walking away. And then she'd walk away. But she didn't have to say that, but I loved it so much because she added her flair to it. So she wasn't going to let anybody hurt her.
Well, it's a pop-up flair, because you did a post not too long ago where you wrote, if people say things that are sometimes stupid and you just want to throw glitter at them and walk away.
Yes.
So I love that. I said, oh, something must have happened for him to say that. So just give her some glitter to put in her pocket and go.
Absolutely. Listen, I think all of us, adults too, should have glitter in our pockets. Just throw it in someone's face when they get you aggravated.
Yes. And you know what? It's true. And the thing is I think it's a matter of, as we walk through the world, is being present. And sometimes we're just so stuck in our heads, which what I loved about the book. Now I have to tell you, so share with everybody the story. Your father was he was obsessed with germs. Okay. Obviously, and the house, oh my God, thank God he was injured.
Yeah.
Was that moment?
I'll give you the short version of that chapter, which is called The Blow Up, right?
Yes, blow up.
And the reason I called it The Blow Up was it sounded like a relationship blow up, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, then when you start to read it, it's certainly not, that's not the story. So I was at work one day, and a friend of my mom's called and said, you need to get to your parents' house. The house is on fire. Right. I thought, okay, must be a trash can, or it must be something in the back. There's something going on. It's not a big deal. So I went over. When I got there, it was like a movie set at Universal Studios. And the whole, it seemed to me at the time, the whole village showed up, and the house had burned down to the ground. And it's because my father and because of what he does for a living, he's an embalmer and he's a funeral director. So he's constantly with his gloves and he's a germaphobe always. And when you read my book, you'll see the hysterical things that he taught us on how to avoid germs. But for this situation, they had a dog. The dog had an accident. He wanted to clean the accident off the floor, and one thing led to the next. He was now pulling the rug up and pulling the tile up, and then he was scraping it. And then the AC unit was on, and he scratched it for a second, and then it ignited, and the house blew up. Literally. To the ground, nothing left. And that all came from him being a germaphobe. And I laugh about it now because he was way ahead of COVID. I mean, he had everything ready and set for COVID when it came upon us. So in the book, which I love doing, and how I wrote this was, there are very emotional moments and there are very funny moments, because that's life. Life is sad, and life has joy, and there's laughter in between. So that's important to share.
I think it is. And I think what was interesting is share with everybody, when you were invited to speak at The View, you thought you were going to talk about planning.
Yeah.
So share, I don't want to give it away, but talk to them about, they expected you to do something else.
Yes. So this is when my first book came out back in 2000. I think it was 2004. Possibly 2003. And they called me up and said, we'd love to have you come on to The View. And I'm thinking, The View? I had never been on television ever before.
Oh, that was I didn't realize that was your first time.
I mean, not the best place to start, by the way, but certainly a great place to start. So they wanted me to come. I thought they were having me come to talk about my new book, about how to plan parties. So when I got to the ABC, and my producer said, we want you to create 5 different cocktail drinks for each of the 5 ladies. And at the time, it was Barbara Walters, Joy Behar, Barbara, Star Jones, and Meredith Rivera. So I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to do 5 drinks? First of all, I'm not a mixologist. Okay, let's start there. Okay, second of all, it's 5 minutes, 1 drink per person. So I said yes. I was always the yes person. I always said yes and figured it out. So we went home after I got my notes from the producer, and I took a stopwatch, and I kept making my drinks. And too long, do it faster, make it different. And I practiced over and over and over, showed up on set, and I had to do it live. And I slammed it so perfect that they were so shocked. I don't know if they wanted me to fail, but what I did was I was so successful at it that became a whole 5-year stint for me, being the entertainment expert for The View.
It went from a paper name to a permanent name on the door.
Yeah,
I love that moment. Okay. So there is one thing I want to talk about, but I wanted to save it towards the end. So talk to me a little bit about, a little bit about the event side and your mentoring. I mean, I want to share that with the community, which I think is wonderful. We get to a point in life, you're sharing, and I love mentoring. It's not that you're just teaching. So share how you got involved. I know it was during COVID. I was listening to one of your interviews. So,
I feel responsible for being in the industry for so long and having the success that I've had over the course of my career, that the industry as a whole, so the industry of events as a whole, is missing and lacking education. And I don't know what the reason for that is, other than I think a lot of people are stepping into this industry without the proper tools. So when we built the mentorship program, my husband Joey and myself decided we need a place for people that really want to elevate themselves and become more powerful, more successful, do the right things for their clients, and most importantly, make money. Because so many people in this particular industry work so hard and are very good, but they don't have the understanding of the value of what they're worth. And we're trying to showcase that our time is worth money. Our experiences are worth money, and this is how you become successful. So the mentorship program is you join for a year. You have 2 sessions a month where we have a topic, and typically we have someone come on that's also an expert that joins us. And then with our second 2 weeks later is a Q&A time to be with David and Joey and ask us questions, what's on their mind. Sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's professional. And it has literally changed these people in the industry's lives. They are becoming more successful. We bring them onto projects that we do that are massive so they can learn from us on the ground. So I feel, and I've always have said this for years, is that when you become successful in any career, it is our job to stand up and teach people. The problem with the industry of special events is that the ones that are at the top of the top, they tend to brag about what they do, but not share about how to be better and become successful. And that's what we do.
I love that, because you're right. And that's what happens. And it happens in multiple industries. But again, being involved in this industry like you are, people do. They want to hold it, to their vest. When I started 14 years ago, I transitioned from car rental to officiating. I reached out to some people to teach me, and they said no, because then you might take away my business. And then when I started to become an officiant, I created a course. I had officiants come to me and says, "Why are you doing that? We don't need more competition." No, it's up to me to share what I love doing so that that next person can be better than me, which is what you're doing. You don't feel, you want each of these people you're mentoring, you want them to be better than you, right? You want them to succeed and feel. It goes just beyond money, how they feel about themselves.
Exactly. You know what's interesting? I wrote in my book, the very short little section in the book, and wrote about 5 specific high-end planners that I met. I met them, and to me, they were like gods to me, right? I was young in my career, and they didn't share anything with me. They were, in fact, actually, I think, very insulting to me, and they didn't want to have me part of their circle. And I tried so hard to learn from one of them. And then apparently, one of the 5, no names mentioned in the book, one of them sent me a note and apologized after reading my book and saying, "I'm sorry that I was the person that I was then. I'm not that person now." And she sent me a note and also sent me a couple emails. And I thought, you know what? Even just that connection maybe might have shifted who she is now. She seemed like she was a little bit more lighter and a little bit more graceful. And I was stunned by that. And I was really glad that someone such as her, who was really not nice to me, apologized.
It takes a lot.
Yeah.
For somebody to apologize. It truly does. We think it's easy, and to be sincere about it, especially to you. So that was probably a great moment where it touched you, like you said. And I think I read that. There is something that you bring up in the book that touched me. And because I think it's important, like you said, we're sharing, we love people, we want to be able to share our talents. And I believe it's chapter 10, burning the candles at both ends.
Yeah.
That was, your kids are going to read that and see how their papa was. Right.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We all experiment, we all try. And you said, "I finally discovered that pain can be power. When you harness your pain, direct it appropriately and with passion, and your struggle can turn into success." So unpack that. That's a beautiful, beautiful saying. So I'm going to borrow that for a while. I just want you to know.
You gave me goosebumps from my own book. It's hard. That chapter was one of the hardest chapters for me to write, besides the chapter on my mom.
Which
I went through a really dark time, and I had nobody that was there to help me. So that chapter that we're referring to is when I kind of went off the deep end. And it's, when you read it. I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. Nothing that harmed myself terribly, but the length of time, which was about 7 years of me going to clubs and taking drugs and doing things that I shouldn't have done. I never, as I say and I write in the book, I never sexually got involved with anybody. I was petrified of it all, probably because I got, I was in the part of when HIV was,
Yes.
really at its height. And I used that as a crutch for me to stay away from anyone physically. But I went out by myself, and I lived a false facade of me in a happy place. Being under a disco ball with lights and doing drugs was, my version of feeling great. And for whatever reason, I stayed safe. But it positioned me for the next chapter of my life. I'm grateful that I was smart enough not to go down the rabbit hole, which could very well have happened because I was doing so many different things, inputting into my body. And I think it was necessary for me to have done that, looking back today, not looking back then, that allowed me to get to the next chapter, no pun intended. I'm not proud of it at all, but I will say that it probably helped me at some point.
Well, that's what and it touched me in a lot of ways for me personally. And everybody has, that's why I loved what you wrote, because we all go through different pains in our life. And, you talk about your mom. And when I heard you speak at Wedding MBA in 2021, okay, you spoke about, which you touched me because my late husband had a heart transplant. So I know what it was like to take care of somebody later on in his latter years. He was fortunate to live 15 years. But you talked about your mother and her Alzheimer's, and share with people, because people, as we get older, and I'm over 65, so I know it's important. Great. Thank you. But the point is that we take our aging population and kind of move them aside. So Cheryl, you are devoted. I mean, your mother, first of all, when you talked about doing your drugs and everything when you were younger, your grandparents must have been watching over you. That's all I'm going to say. But talk about your mom. And I think what you said is important today, because we all are going to be touched with somebody in our life that's going to have an illness that's going to be debilitating.
My mom, I wrote in the book that she's been my best friend, and she still is. She's still alive. And she is, I think, now in the 16th month of being bedridden, which is really hard. And unfortunately for me, my family doesn't allow me to see her. It's a lot. It's written in the book, and it's shared in there, and it's in bits and pieces. But she worked for me for so many years as my assistant at work, and we traveled around the world, and she was always there. She always said to me, you can do anything that you want to do. Just try it, just do it, and do the version of what you can at the best you can. And right before I finished writing my book, and this is like a sign from God, we had moved. I'd sold a house in Connecticut, and everything came packed over to California. And I went into the garage, and there was a little box, and I opened the box, and there was a plastic baggie. And then I opened the plastic baggie, and then there was a book in there, and it was a book on poems. And on the cover of the inside of the book was a letter written by my mom, that I had never read this book and never had seen this book. And I opened it up, and it's just opened everything. It was as if she had been waiting for that moment of that day when I opened up that box for me to read that before my book was going to be released. She has been such a pivotal part of every single thing that I've done in my life. For good, for bad, for beauty, for joy, everything. She was right there. The hard part for me today, and I just spoke about this with my husband Joey a couple of days ago, I said, I need to stop. I play music when I go to sleep. I have very specific songs, 3 of them, all of which remind me of my mom. And I dedicate them to myself, to her, in my head. And I said, Joey, I have to stop playing these songs. I go to sleep sad, and I wake up sad. So I shifted my music a week ago into something that was more peaceful and more meditative. So I can meditate towards the music as opposed to sit there with sadness thinking of my mom. It's not meaning I'm dismissing her. It's just allowing me to be a little bit more lighter when I go to sleep and when I wake up. But my mom is one of the kindest, gentlest souls anyone on this earth could be lucky to have met.
And it sounds like your mom is your guiding light and will continue to be your guiding light. Yeah, and that's what's important. And it sounds like what you're trying to do, both you and Joey, with your daughters, is to be their guiding light. The way you speak of your mom, it's a testimony. And I hope my daughter speaks about me at what time. But in closing, because I want to be so mindful of your time. What would David Tutera say to his 21-year-old self today?
Oh, I would probably say to myself at 21 years old to not be scared, to take chances. Don't worry about what people are saying about you, if you even know that they're saying the things that they are. And do the things that I'm doing with my daughters. It's saying to walk away and not allow people to shift your energy and make you feel less of who you are. So I think it's important for all of us, especially at 21 years old, is to stand up with pride and to feel confident. And sometimes we don't feel confident. We have to represent ourselves with confidence. And the most important thing at 21 is go ask for help when you need it. Go ask someone as a professional to help you. I didn't have that. My parents didn't share that with me. I learned nothing about how I can help myself until I wound up in therapy, which helped me. So there's nothing wrong for asking for help. Ask for help.
That's great advice. One thing is, anything on the horizon that we need to know about that David Tutera is doing in the next year that you want to share with everybody? Anything exciting?
Yeah, we've got a lot going on. Well, first of all, we're doing a massive wedding in 2 weeks. So you'll probably see that in People magazine coming up, but that's a big project. Can't share the name, but you'll see it. We have worked over the past 2.5 years to create this program called Dreams Delivered. It is for those that are looking to create celebrations that can't afford a David Tutera experience, but they can have it delivered to their doorstep. Everything from fresh flowers to linens, invitations, vessels, napkin rings, charger plates, glasses. It comes to you with tutorials and videos by me, and it is affordable for people to feel really special because it's so spectacular.
That's amazing. Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to have you back to share that.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for your time, and we're going to have you just stay on a moment. I'm going to go off Facebook Live. Everybody that's listening, those that don't, thank you so much. Happy Valentine's Day.